Ordinance 20-01, an ordinance to adopt an update to the City of Lake Geneva Comprehensive Plan. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
The motion was made by Alderman Halverson and seconded by Alderman Skates to approve ordinance 20-01, an ordinance to adopt an update to the City of Lake Geneva Comprehensive Plan. Alderman Halverson.
This has been a fantastically interesting process, and contrary to some people's impression, I think we have created a document here that has a lot of work has been put into, and we've honored what the citizens wanted in most of the, certainly on Wrigley and Hillmore, and I think that it's a better document than what it started out to be. As for Wrigley, I think it's a good idea that we not include closing Wrigley, but I think it sparked some ideas on creating more of a space for locals to enjoy themselves. I think there are ideas there, and I think that's an example of not killing the baby before it has a chance to grow a little bit. As for Hillmore, I doubt that it will ever be a moneymaker for the city, in that the cost of maintenance would override the cost of the result of any tax implications. I don't think we need more housing. That's been brought up several times, and I think, of course, it would exacerbate the traffic issue. But we will have to live with it in pretty lousy shape for a while, and I think that's just one of the, as somebody has pointed out, one of the accepted things that we have to have in Lake Geneva for a while. I'm optimistic that it will turn out to be a good project. South Shore Drive, I'm not happy with the fact that we say we're going to relocate the boat launch, but I think that it was brought about not for nefarious reasons, but because of environmental concerns. Last year we had a Starry Stonewart incident in which many people that are now proposing we not consider closing South Shore Drive were very concerned about. I don't know that that's the answer. When I was with the paper, I editorialized against closing it, but I don't think we can not consider it. I think we have to consider all the possibilities. I think the boat launch is in a lousy place. Maybe we have to accept it, but it strikes me that it's something that we should have consideration of. Overall, as I said before, I think that this has come out to be a good plan, a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of input from the public, and most of it has been accepted in the plan. And I think that there may be a few commas out of place, but for instance, if the closing of the South Shore Drive comes up, that's something we still have to deal with on an individual basis. It's not a done deal because it's in the comprehensive plan. And once more, I don't think we should conclude that anyone who is against your feelings on something is on the take or whatever, simply because they disagree. I think people have raised many ideas here, and I think that's what this is all about, raising ideas and responding to them. So that was a long speech. It was good.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Howell?
I'd like to commend Dimitri for all the time he's come and spoken before us, and I've agreed with every word he said every time. I think closing Wrigley Drive would be a monumental mistake. Not only for all the reasons Dimitri came up with for convenience, but just for the sad fact that we would lose all that revenue.
Alderman Strawbey?
I agree with a lot of what John said. I think that we did try very hard to give the community as many opportunities as they possibly could to come out and voice their opinion, and I feel in a lot of situations your voices were heard. And none of the people sitting up here want anything bad to happen to this town. We also live here and pay taxes, and we all moved here because we wanted the lifestyle that this town provides. So I don't think just because something goes through that maybe doesn't match 100% of the people, doesn't mean that those decisions are against the people. You can never make 100% of the people happy all the time. And I think everybody up here is trying our best to listen and make smart, informed decisions on behalf of your town and our town. Having said that, I am upset that Wrigley Drive is in there because I don't think it should be. I think closing it isn't even something that should really be brought up for discussion because I think it's just a bad idea. And I also feel the same way about moving the road over by Bigfoot Beach. I asked my husband and my daughter, what do you feel about that? And my daughter said it's the only place on the entire lake that you can drive, walk, or bike next to that beautiful lake. To change that would be horrible. It's one of the things people, when they come to this town, what do you like most about it? Driving in on that road. I think we really have to be careful. I know it's, you know, when this comes up, if it comes up at the Planning Commission, people need to get out and voice it. Because I think this is a town where we do listen.
Alderman Dunn?
Just a couple of things. In order to have a second reading, it would have been nice to have a first reading.
We did.
We did. The last
It
was on the agenda.
should talk to my sleep doctor because my sleep apnea got the best of me, but, yes. Well, it was on the agenda and you just didn't do it. That's problem one. Problem two is I don't hear a reading now. And everybody says everything's hunky-dory. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Everything will be fine. It's not going to be fine. Actually, also, a comprehensive plan is changed every 10 years. It's not very comprehensive, and it's not a plan. And that's my objection. For instance, there's nothing in here to enlarge the lake or the swimming areas. The plan about the boat launch is pretty horrible. I think this should, we've got yes or no vote, up or down. I say down. We add more people in more apartments. Every single one of them, as a resident, is entitled to a boat slip. How many boat slips do we have? We have to think this whole town all over again. We can't just let realtors come in, say, buy a house, buy a lot in Lake Geneva. You have all this access to the lots, and have a boat slip, be able to use the beach. That's great if they can, but the beach is overused now. Everybody shows up who buys these lots. Everybody wants a boat slip. We don't have boat slips for them. Everybody wants to rent the Riviera at a discounted rate. There aren't enough weekends in the year to do that. I think we got to look seriously at, I'm told San Francisco did this. They just said their town's just so big and it can't get any bigger. If we were Elkhorn, we could grow and grow and grow and grow because we don't have anything. But the things that made Lake Geneva nice to live in when I was growing up, every kid could ride to the beach on his bike very easily and very safely. Now we're just growing and growing and growing. It'll be a couple of miles for a kid to drive to the beach. And there's no provisions for anything like that. We've got contradictory mission statements on small town values, not quite sure what those are. And now we got small city values. I have no idea what those are. They're both in the plan where I saw them. I just think we have a choice, up or down. We got along the last 10 years with the plan we have now. I think we could get along 10 years more with the plan that we have now. So I would say vote down.
Yes, Alderman Flower.
So I agree with what a lot of you have already said, in the idea that we've listened to a lot of what you've all had to say. I think we've had more public meetings this comprehensive plan revision than have ever been held. That's not to say we can't do things even better in the future, but I do think that a couple of the items that appear to still be very sensitive in nature to the general public, related to the launch and Ridley Drive, I would say, from what I'm reading on how we have this worded about how we're gonna be moving forward with this current comp plan, we're talking about discussing it more, okay? And we haven't made up our minds about anything of what that might look like. I think you guys have concluded very, very much so on what you think we might want. But I can tell you that I never make up my mind until I've seen all of the things come forward. And Hillmore is the perfect example of how that played out. So I think that we shouldn't be afraid of talking more. I think that that's what makes us great, is getting input from all of you and coming up with lots of different alternatives. I can tell you that we did have some big issues with the launch. I mean, Star Stonewart is a huge problem for us. We need clean boats, clean water, right? So we need to have some kind of solution to what we're gonna do with our launch to help promote that quality improvement to our lake. None of us here want to see that lake be contaminated. We want to see improvements. And if it means maybe exploring whatever the DNR had in the past, maybe we reopen that idea, but that doesn't mean that we're gonna move forward with that. Obviously, it failed in the past for a reason. So what was the reason? What is a compromise between that and something that still can be of good quality for us? That's what we need to talk about, and that's why it needs to stay in the comprehensive plan so that we can have those conversations in the future. It is very important to all of us to have a high-quality lake. That's what it's all about. Plus the fact that the launch is in a horrible location from a traffic standpoint. I say that as a traffic engineer. So, so there's issues with that. Closing Wrigley Drive too. Okay, so that was a great out-of-the-box brainstorming idea that we heard. And I think that none of us have actually ever really discussed that wholeheartedly. I know that a lot of you have been worried about it, and I thank Dimitri for everything that you have done to bring some information to us that we wouldn't normally have necessarily thought about. But that too, if we decide that this is an important thing to be talking about, all that stuff comes out in those decisions. And I think that, again, there could be a compromise to something there, okay? So you're right, a permanent location of a boardwalk, that doesn't seem like maybe that's a good fit for us, but that doesn't mean that it's something that we don't talk about. I think that we close Wrigley Drive in front of Flatiron, and it works for events that we hold here year after year after year. So would we ever want to possibly consider closing that stretch for 4th of July weekend when there's so many people here that you're lucky if you got that parking spot? And if you think that those people are moving out of that parking spot, you're crazy. And there's so many people here that it's not safe for people to be driving through that stretch anyway. So maybe there's some opportunities for temporary closing of Wrigley Drive. Maybe something comes out of this that could better our community. But you're right, probably a permanent closure, maybe that's not the right thing, because we need to have handicap accessibility. And we want something that's gonna be permanent. You need emergency vehicles to be able to get in and out of there. I mean, we're hearing what you're saying. So I don't want you guys to, it seems like you guys come up with some, you're not hearing us speak because it's not on the agenda, and you're dreaming what you think we're thinking. And it's not even close to anything that we're thinking. I just wish that you would have some faith that we do listen to what you're saying, okay? And just because we have it in here doesn't mean that we're gonna move forward with something without gathering more input. I would never want that. So please just keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to discuss is the 120 properties. I am not 100% confident on the discussions we've had so far about access. To be honest, we haven't looked at the plan in detail enough to know where we want access and where we don't want access. And I know that there's discussion about not wanting access to the neighboring subdivision, but I can tell you, I don't want a bunch of access points off of Town Line Road either. So we don't know enough, in my mind, to be laying out how that development should be between residential, multifamily, and the commercial. You know, the commercial piece is quite obvious. It should be actually on 120, but you know, where should, I think that a plan could come forward that could configure those roads within that development so that it's not promoting people to drive through that other subdivision. as a civil engineer who's designed site plans and subdivision developments, I can tell you it is possible for us to make something that is not conveniently driven by other people. And for us to lay out the geometrics of that site right now without really knowing that, I think we should leave it the way it is. On the current zoning, the current land use, it offers the developer flexibility. And again, I think that, was it Denise brought up some really great points about if we are really trying to be having this low income housing, and that's why we're saying that we're doing more multifamily, but then it's not gonna be really targeting them from a cost point, what are we doing? So, if anything, I think that maybe we should be voting no on it, because I'd like to see more discussion about that particular topic.
Anyone else? I'd like to do a couple of things. One is there's been discussion and correspondence related to the mission statement. And I'd like to read the mission statement that is in the 2020 plan. This is just for clarification. The city of Lake Geneva seeks to preserve its small city atmosphere, reasonable cost of living and doing business, and high quality of life by carefully controlling land use and development, and by delivering high-quality programs and services in a fiscally responsible manner. That is identical, word for word, in the mission statement from the 2009 plan. Word for word. I have both of the copies right here. So the discussion at one time had been about changing it, but these are exactly the way that, it's exactly the way today as it was 11 years ago. Next, I'd like to discuss why it's important, I believe, to discuss and explore ideas and to study them. I think that the Gilmore concept studies are the perfect example of what can come out of things. We learn information in those studies, and trust me, there was an awful lot of objection to even conducting those studies, to gathering that information. But what did we learn out of that? We learned that there are 130 acres of environmentally sensitive or potentially environmentally sensitive land at Gilmore. That's protected land, 130 acres out of 192. We had 4 different developers present plans prior to that, their development plans. Not one of them identified those 130 acres because it wasn't in their interest. The fact that the city did a study in its interest, then those acres suddenly are identified. So out of studies comes information. Then we can make smart decisions. We can do smart planning. Let's look at this notion about moving the boat launch. What we are doing there is, or we are proposing that we do, is to work with the Wisconsin DNR to address safety issues concerning Bigfoot Beach and South Lakeshore Drive, and to relocate the boat launch, perhaps in conjunction with the WDNR master plan process for Bigfoot Beach State Park. That doesn't say we're doing it. It doesn't assign a date to it that it's going to be done at any particular time. But what it does do is say, all right, what are the benefits of doing it? Right now, we do have an invasive species called the starry stonewort. That didn't just happen. That came in on boats. And it's like probably most of us who have backyards where we have weeds growing, and we didn't plant those weeds, they blew in from our next door neighbor. And until the next door neighbor takes care of it, we're still gonna have dandelion. But in this instance, we have an opportunity to build a boat watch station that will eliminate these tiny, tiny spores that come on the bottoms of boats. That's worth studying, that's worth understanding. In the end, maybe the boat launch doesn't move, and we figure out some other way to battle the starry stonewort. But it's worth studying, it's worth getting information and making smart decisions about it. we can't operate just on emotion, that we don't wanna ruin the perfect driving view. Why worry that people are driving along there and looking at that beautiful lake as kids are crossing the street? That's happened. That's happened. So, let's look at it. We haven't made a decision, and this doesn't dictate that we do. And the same goes for the pedestrian plaza. What it says in the plan is, study the potential of a plaza north of the Riviera. Consider widening sidewalks and explore the potential use of Flatiron Park. Study the potential impact of such changes on parking and local businesses. That's gathering information. When we make decisions at home, we try to get data. We try to find out if we're buying a house, what's the condition of the house? What are the neighboring properties like? What's the school district like? We do that because we want to make smart decisions. That's what we're doing here. We're saying, let's study it, let's look at it, let's think about what this is. And in the end, we'll have the data in front of us and we'll make smart decisions. It's not based on emotion. So I think this plan in the 9 workshops and Hank Tivian has talked about it. He's up to 82 or 182 times he's been here. There's been a lot of discussion and we are deeply, deeply appreciative of the fact that people have voiced their opinions, have come out, have written notes. It takes a lot of time. I get that. And you all have lives that get in the way of showing up here, and I appreciate that you come here anyway. So thank you for that. I think this is a very good plan. I think it's a really good third draft. And guess what? A year from now, we can go back over it all again. So let's do the smart thing. Let's look at the possibilities and let's study and get the information. Thank you. Any other comments? Alderman Bennett.
Just a couple of things. We say we've identified some environmentally sensitive areas in Hillmore. Going back to one of our several hundred discussions, remember they were talking about the subdivision that's now the Meadowlands, and someone pointed out that the apartment complex just south of Manning Way was, the Meadowlands had apartments in their original proposal, and those apartments in the Meadowlands were actually across the marsh, just south of Manning Way. And at that time, and I know this because my house is on Manning Way, that the Meadowlands subdivision was almost entirely built by the time they started on my house on Manning Way. And at the end of my street, where the apartments were supposed to be, was zoned one house on 35 acres because it was environmentally sensitive. Well, Mr. Slavny found out that it wasn't environmentally sensitive, and it went from one house on 35 acres to the most densely populated part of our subdivision. And I'm skeptical, especially the lower part closer to the marsh, if it isn't a little too close to the marsh. But the fact is, environmentally sensitive acres have been identified, and Mr. Slavny will fly over a plane and discover that they're not environmentally sensitive, and those areas could very well be developed. So I don't think we should rest with the assurance that they've been identified as environmentally sensitive. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'm sorry, Alderman Halverson?
Just to emphasize emphasize, because there still seems to be some confusion, there's nothing in here that says we're closing Wrigley, and we're keeping Hillmore the same, and that's because of your efforts in part, and there's no changes in the mission statement.
Anyone else? All right. You got my other sheet here. The motion was made and seconded to approve ordinance 20-01, an ordinance to adopt an update to the City of Lake Geneva Comprehensive Plan. Please use the voting machine to record your votes. And the plan passes 6 votes positive, 2 votes no. That's Alderman Dunn and Alderman Flower voting no. Thank you very much. Item 13, recommendation